So I would like to introduce Marc Burman. Marc is a certified financial planner. So welcome, Marc. I'm just going to hand straight back to you actually and just ask you to maybe introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what we'll be talking about today.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for inviting me along today, Alka. So what we're going to talk about today is getting your money working harder. Brief information about myself. So I'm a certified financial planner, a level 6 advisor, also a member of the Society of Trust and Estate Planning organisation, so I can advise on inheritance tax and estate planning, and also a non-practicing solicitor. So just moving into the topic for today. So you work hard, let's make your money work even harder. So a couple of things. We're going to first of all talk about a few easy wins, some low-hanging fruit that can be actioned straight away. Next topic is how do we get free money from the government? So that's always a useful topic to be aware of. And finally, how to use all your tax-free allowances. So first easy win is getting free money from the government. So what I'm going to talk about is pensions.
Brilliant. I like to see that question up there. What is a pension, Marc? I guess there's no such thing as a silly question. So it's really useful to get to fundamentals, because you might think everyone understands what a pension is, but it'd be really nice just to get some clarity on it, actually.
Well, I mean, quite simply, a pension is simply a wrapper that sits around some type of investment. Now, that type of investment could be shares, could be some bonds, it could be cash, or a combination of those types of things. The key is it's a tax-free wrapper. So what that means is anything within that wrapper, any growth within that wrapper is tax-free. Okay, and it grows over a period of time, and the government will not tax anything within that wrapper whilst it's growing. So that's the essence of it, to keep it quite high level. Now, the thing is, I mean, this is where the bonus comes, if you like, from in respect of pensions. So this diagram shows us what happens if you're investing £100 into a pension and your different tax rates. So in effect, the government, to encourage people to invest into pensions, they offer this inducement, if you like. So what they're saying is, as a basic rate taxpayer, you pay in £80, and that will be topped up by tax relief by £20. So £80 gets you £100. And a high rate taxpayer, and it's interesting, the high rate and the top rate. So you pay £60 as a high rate, and through tax relief and the self-assessment claim, that's topped up by a further £40. So you can see, as you then reach the top rate or additional rate, only £55 will result in a £100 contribution into your pension. That's how the top-up takes place. Now, what's interesting is there are these top-ups and it gets slightly more complicated, are subject to a few restrictions and a few limits. So there are what we call the annual allowance, there's the lifetime allowance, there's restrictions on what age you can access your pension, and also we should be aware of the pension freedoms that recently came in 2015 as well. So, I mean, Alka, you may be asking me, well, what does this mean to me? You know, how much can I pay into my pension? Now, really, the rule of law is that it's the lower of your relevant earnings, or £40,000. So I'll give you an example. If you are earning £30,000 a year, so as a trainee medic, or you're starting near the beginning of your career, if you're earning, say, £30,000, then £30,000 would be the amount that you can pay into your pension in any given year. Whereas if you're slightly more advanced in your career, and if you were earning, say, £100,000 a year, it will be capped at £40,000 a year. However, not to complicate matters too much, but because you have an annual allowance each year of £40,000, if we have a look back, there's something called carry forward, which strangely, you look back over the last 3 years, Don't ask me why, but that's what they call it. Now, here's the thing. If you have an allowance, and you do, of £40,000, if you're only paying in less than the full amount, so you're paying in the blue amounts that are shown here, that means that you've got some leftover pension allowance that you can use, and you can actually pay that into the current year to make sure that you're fully effectively paid up into your pension scheme. So that's something that's available. What I will say is, if that you're only earning, say, £100,000, I say only, if your salary is £100,000, £100,000 is the maximum you can top up. So again, there's another ceiling on here. It's not a straightforward area. I would recommend that if you are thinking that you haven't used your previous year's allowance, it's worth definitely taking professional advice, working out specifically how much you can pay in. If you pay in the wrong amount, or you pay in more, then you may be subject to tax charges. So this is a really important area. But again, once you pay that amount in, that'll be subject to the top up from the government. So again, it's another way of getting free money from the government. I've also touched upon some other allowances. So there are what we call, you may have heard of the tapering provisions. Now, the tapering provisions apply to higher salaries. I'm not going to talk about this in any great detail, but effectively, if there are any, anyone in this area that are on a specifically high salary, the amount they can pay into the pension is tapered down. So it could be tapered down all the way down to £4,000 a year. So it's always worth for those high earners taking specific professional advice on how much they can pay in to avoid any penalties. The other area is pension freedom. So I touched upon this before in previous episodes. This is, again, a little bit more flexibility. Since 2015, most new pensions allow for this flexible drawdown, so that the pension can be accessed after 55 in a manner that suits the investor. That could be taking it all out in one chunk, it could be taking a small income, or it could be taking a combination of both of those sources of income. So that's very much it for pensions. What I'd like to touch upon next is your next easy win is your Icer. Now, again, an Icer is simply a tax-free wrapper. Again, it sits around the investment, same types of investments as we talked about earlier on. Now, you may ask, well, what are Icers good for, and what can they be used for? Icers are really good for shorter term goals. So with pensions, don't forget your pension is locked in until age 55. With an Icer, you can access that at any time. So it's a great way of utilizing some extra funds for those shorter term objectives. So it could be for saving it for a deposit for a property for yourself. It could be if you have children, and milestone events for the children as well.
Okay. It's as simple as picking up an Icer form and filling that in, is it?
Well, it's interesting because most people think, well, the starting point is to go to their own bank for an Icer, and you may have walked past on the high street and looked in the window and said Icer, fixed rates, 1% or 2%. The challenge, in my view, in approaching your own bank is, first of all, they tend to be their own products they can offer you, so they're not always whole market offerings, but also they tend to be cash Icers, and the rates tend to be quite low. So my advice really would be to go to the open market and look at stocks and shares Icers if that's in line with your risk profile, and you'll find that you'll have much more options and the potential for a lot better gains if you're looking for stocks and shares Icers rather than cash Icers. So that's where I would certainly start. Point to make is, the maximum you can put in each year is £20,000 for adults. There's also junior Icers. So if you have children, the maximum you can put in for your children is £9,000 a year up to the age of 18. Now it's interesting because I talked about carry forward before with pensions. There's no carry forward from previous years with Icer, so it's almost like the old use it or use it provision. You have to use them in the current tax year or they're gone. And I've mentioned already, you can have full access. If you need to take the money out of your ISA, you can do so. And what's interesting, as well as you can do this with pensions, you can consolidate your old ISA, so put them all combined into a more appropriate product on a platform like we talked about earlier on. Okay, so the other allowance, and again, anything tax-free, it's always worth, I always say, anything tax-free we've grabbed with both hands. There's further tax-free allowances or allowances that you should always be using, and that's your capital gains allowance.
Do you just want to expand on that, Mark, just in terms of sort of definition?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people, the first thing they think about with capital gains is, you know, when they sell a property, you know, the gain will be subject to tax. It's the same would apply to anything that's sold that's not subject to exemptions. So in this case, we're talking about shares, we're talking about investments. If you buy an investment goes up in value, then that gain is potentially taxable. But everyone will have a tax-free allowance, if you like, or a capital gains allowance of £12,300. So what that means is if you buy an investment and it goes up in value, and then you sell that investment, any gains up to 12,300 will be free of capital gains tax. Okay, so if you're turning over your investments to utilize those allowances. Now, this is, again, slightly more complicated because it means that you have to structure your investments a certain way. And it's definitely recommended that you have a professional do this for you to make sure that the limits are not exceeded and that your portfolio is put together in such a way to allow you to harvest these gains. But that is my recommendation for using those types of allowances. So these are just really a few of the tax-free vehicles and approaches that you could utilize quite easily, you know, on a day-to-day basis. So that's very much it.
Perfect, Mark. Thank you. I think you've definitely given us 3 wins there for sure. I think people will have questions though on the basis of those. So anywhere they can come and find you for a quick chat?
Yeah, so I can be contacted via email. The details just shown here, also on LinkedIn. And my website, marcburman.com, has some really useful resources on there as well. And just to wrap up, because I'm fully regulated, it's important for me to point out the main point is that this isn't personalised advice. So if you want personalised advice, speak to a financial advisor or a planner like myself. And importantly, for what we've talked about today, the value of investment could go up as well as down, and you may not get back the full amount invested. So just wanted to point that out for completeness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark, for simplifying and demystifying and sharing some great tips and providing some really good advice there. Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.